Daniel gasped as he jolted awake, his body aching all over. His vision was blurry, his head spinning. The last thing he remembered was his spaceship malfunctioning, alarms blaring, fire in the cockpit, and then nothing. Now he was here, lying on cold, rough ground, surrounded by towering trees with strange glowing leaves. The air smelled different, clean but unfamiliar. He groaned and sat up, his muscles protesting with every move. His ship was a wreck. The front half had been completely crushed against a rocky hill, while the rest was scattered across the alien landscape. Sparks flickered from broken wires, and smoke curled into the sky. His helmet's oxygen gauge blinked red. Low supply. He needed to move. Daniel pushed himself to his feet, staggering slightly. His suit was still intact, but his helmet visor was cracked. He pressed a button on his wrist device. No signal. No connection to the fleet. He was completely alone. Or so he thought. Something moved in the distance, a shadow among the trees. His heart pounded as he turned, scanning the dense forest. At first, he thought it was an animal. But then he saw her. A woman, or at least something that looked like one. She stood among the trees, half hidden, watching him. Her tall, slender frame was covered in smooth, deep blue skin that shimmered under the alien sun. Her long, silvery hair swayed gently, even though there was no wind. Her glowing violet eyes locked onto him with curiosity and caution. Daniel didn't move. He knew better than to startle an unknown creature. Slowly, he raised his hands, showing he had no weapons. "Hello," he tried. His voice was hoarse, dry. His throat ached from the crash. The alien woman tilted her head slightly but didn't respond. Her delicate features remained calm, but her eyes flickered with something. Confusion. Hesitation. Then she spoke. Not in words, not in a language Daniel recognized, but in his mind. "Strange. How do you hear me, human?" Daniel stiffened, his breath catching in his throat. He heard her, not through his ears, but directly inside his head. A soft, musical voice, yet filled with disbelief. He looked around, expecting to see some kind of translation device, but there was nothing. His heart pounded. He was exhausted, injured. Maybe he was hallucinating. Maybe the crash had done something to his brain. But the alien woman's wide eyes told him something else. He wasn't supposed to hear her. Daniel swallowed hard and took a cautious step forward. "I don't know," he admitted, speaking carefully. "I just can." Her expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across her face. She took a step back, her body tensing. He could tell she wasn't sure whether to run or stay. "This is impossible," she whispered, or rather, the words formed in his mind, clear as his own thoughts. "No other beings can hear us. Our voices are not meant for outsiders." Daniel frowned. Maybe something about me is different." His words felt ridiculous even as he said them. He was just a human, stranded on an unknown world. There was nothing special about him. The alien woman watched him closely, as if searching for a lie. Then, slowly, she took a breath. "Your kind should not be here." Daniel let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Trust me, I wasn't planning on visiting." He gestured toward the wreckage. "I crashed. My ship is destroyed. I have no way to leave." The woman's gaze flickered toward the broken remains of his ship. For a moment, something softened in her expression. "You are injured," she noted. Daniel glanced down at himself. His suit was scratched and dented, but he wasn't bleeding. Still, his body ached all over, and exhaustion was creeping in. "I'll be fine," he muttered, though he wasn't sure if that was true. He needed food, water, and oxygen soon. His helmet's gauge blinked again. Oxygen, 4%. Not good. The alien woman seemed to realize his situation. Her glowing violet eyes flickered to his helmet, then back to his face. She hesitated for a long moment. Then, with a small sigh, she turned slightly and motioned for him to follow. "Come." Daniel blinked in surprise. What? Follow me. You will not survive the night alone. He hesitated. Trusting an unknown alien on an unfamiliar planet wasn't exactly the smartest decision. But what choice did he have? His oxygen wouldn't last much longer, and the alternative was dying alone in the wreckage of his ship. Taking a deep breath, Daniel nodded. All right, he said. Lead the way. The alien woman turned and began walking deeper into the strange forest. Daniel followed, his mind racing. He had no idea where she was taking him, but one thing was certain. She wasn't just another alien. She was something far more mysterious, and somehow, for reasons neither of them understood, he could hear her, and she wasn't sure whether to be afraid of him or herself. Daniel followed the alien woman through the dense forest, his legs heavy with exhaustion. The ground was uneven, covered in strange moss that glowed faintly in the dimming light. The trees stretched high, their leaves shimmering in shades of deep blue and silver. Every now and then, he caught glimpses of small creatures darting between the branches, their glowing eyes watching him. He had so many questions. Who was this alien? Where was she taking him? And most of all, how was he able to hear her voice inside his mind? Keep moving, human, her voice echoed in his head. We must reach shelter before nightfall. Daniel forced himself to keep walking, though his body screamed for rest. You haven't even told me your name, he said, his voice hoarse. She didn't turn to look at him, but after a moment, she responded. Lyrian. Daniel nodded. All right, Lyrian. Any chance you can tell me where we're going? To safety, she answered simply. That didn't exactly reassure him, but he didn't have a better option. His oxygen was dangerously low, and whatever lived on this planet, he doubted he wanted to meet it after dark. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a rocky cliffside. Lyrian placed her hand against the stone, and with a faint hum, a hidden doorway slid open. Cool air rushed out, carrying the scent of minerals and something floral. Inside, she instructed. Daniel hesitated only for a second before stepping in. The tunnel was dimly lit by soft blue crystals embedded in the walls. The air was breathable. He took off his cracked helmet and inhaled deeply. Relief flooded him. He wouldn't suffocate. Lyrian watched him closely, her glowing violet eyes unreadable. Your kind is not supposed to be here, she said after a moment. This world does not welcome outsiders. Daniel ran a hand through his messy brown hair. Yeah, well, I didn't exactly plan a vacation here. My ship crashed. I didn't have a choice. Lyrian studied him in silence, then turned and walked deeper into the cave. Daniel followed, his boots crunching softly on the smooth stone floor. The tunnel led to a small chamber. A natural spring bubbled in the center, its water clear and glowing faintly. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, their meaning unknown to him. Lyrian knelt by the water and touched the surface. A ripple of light spread outward. Drink, she said. Daniel eyed the water cautiously. It's safe. Lyrian's gaze met his. Would I bring you here if it were not? Fair point. He knelt down and cupped some water in his hands, bringing it to his lips. The moment he drank, a cool, refreshing sensation spread through his body. The aches in his muscles eased slightly, and the dryness in his throat vanished. He let out a deep breath. That's actually amazing. Lyrian remained silent, watching him carefully. Finally, Daniel sat back and looked at her. So, you can hear my thoughts too, right? She shook her head. No, only you can hear mine. That is what makes this strange. Daniel frowned. But how? I don't have telepathy. Humans don't have that ability. Lyrian seemed troubled by his words. She stood and paced slightly, her fingers brushing the symbols on the walls. Our people speak without sound. No outsider has ever heard us. Until now. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe it's because of the crash. I hit my head pretty hard. Lyrian gave him a sharp look. Injury does not grant you abilities that have never existed before. Daniel sighed. Okay, then what's your theory? Lyrian hesitated. I do not know. But if my people learn of this, they will not welcome you. Daniel's stomach tightened. Not welcome me. Why? Because you are different. And in our history, differences have always led to danger. That didn't sound good. Daniel leaned forward. But I'm not a threat. I just want to survive and get off this planet. Lyrian's expression remained guarded. You say that now, but the unknown is feared for a reason. Silence stretched between them. Daniel stared at the flickering reflections in the water, trying to make sense of everything. He was stranded. He could somehow hear an alien's thoughts, and now he was being warned that her people wouldn't accept him. Not exactly the best situation. After a long moment, he spoke again. Then why did you help me? Lyrian's lips parted slightly, but no words or thoughts came at first. Finally, she turned away. I do not know. Daniel watched her, sensing the conflict in her mind. Maybe she had saved him out of curiosity, or maybe, despite her warning, she didn't truly believe he was dangerous. Either way, one thing was clear. He was in deeper than he ever expected. And something told him this was only the beginning. Daniel sat near the glowing water, his mind filled with questions. He had crash-landed on an alien planet, met a strange yet intelligent alien woman named Lyrian, and somehow he could hear her thoughts. It made no sense. He was just an ordinary human. Lyrian remained silent, standing near the entrance of the cave, her violet eyes staring out into the dark forest. She was tense, her body still and unreadable. After a long silence, Daniel finally spoke. So, what now? Lyrian didn't look at him. You will stay here for the night. It is not safe outside. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Right. And after that? Lyrian hesitated. She wasn't sure. She had brought him here without thinking. She had only known that he wouldn't survive out there alone. But now she realized something. She didn't want him to leave. I do not know, she admitted. Daniel looked at her, studying her carefully. He could tell she was struggling with something. Finally, he asked, why do your people fear outsiders so much? Lyrian closed her eyes for a moment before answering. Long ago, we were not like this. We did not hide from the stars. We spoke with our voices, and we explored. But then, the war came, not against your kind, against others. They saw us as weak. We did not fight back, and because of that, we nearly disappeared. Daniel frowned. So your people became isolated. She nodded. We chose silence. We abandoned speech, relying only on our thoughts to speak with one another. We believed that if no one could hear us, no one could hurt us again. Daniel absorbed her words. It made sense. After suffering so much, her people had chosen to retreat, to cut themselves off from the universe. But that also meant they had lived in fear for generations. Slowly, he asked, and me, what do you think I am? Lyrian hesitated, then turned to face him. I do not know, but you should not be able to hear me. Daniel sighed. Yeah, I figured that part out. Silence settled between them again. The cave was peaceful, but outside, the alien night had come alive with strange sounds. Distant roars echoed through the forest, and shadows shifted beyond the trees. Daniel leaned back against the stone wall, exhaustion weighing on him. You know, if I didn't just survive a crash, I'd say this place is beautiful. Lyrian tilted her head slightly, surprised. You think so? Daniel nodded. Yeah. The glowing plants, the sky, even this water. It's like something out of a dream. Lyrian's expression softened slightly. She had never thought about her world that way before. To her, it was home. But to him, it was something new, something amazing. She sat down near the water, watching Daniel carefully. You are strange, human. Daniel smirked. I've been called worse. For the first time, Lyrian almost smiled. But before she could say anything else, a sudden noise outside made them both freeze. A deep guttural growl. The sound of heavy footsteps approaching. Lyrian's eyes narrowed. She stood up immediately. "Stay here." Daniel pushed himself up. "What is it?" "A predator. And it is hunting." She moved toward the entrance, her body tense. Daniel wasn't about to sit back and wait for whatever it was to find them. He followed her, stepping carefully beside her. Outside, the forest was filled with moving shadows. A low growl rumbled through the air again. Then, from the darkness, a massive creature stepped forward. It was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It had 6 legs, sharp, curved claws, and dark scales that shimmered in the dim light. Its eyes glowed red, locked onto them with hunger. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "That thing looks like it could eat me in one bite." "It could," Lyrian said calmly, "but it will not." She took a slow step forward, raising her hand. The creature snarled, but Lyrian didn't flinch. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, and a strange hum filled the air. Daniel watched in amazement as the creature's aggressive stance slowly relaxed. Its glowing red eyes blinked, and then, without warning, it turned and disappeared into the forest. Daniel exhaled in shock. What just happened? Lyrian lowered her hand. "I told it to leave." Daniel stared at her. "You can control animals." "Not control. Persuade. Our thoughts are strong, even to the creatures of this world." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "Okay. That's impressive." Lyrian turned to him, her expression unreadable again. "And yet, my voice does not work on you. That is what troubles me." Daniel frowned. "Wait, you tried to control me." "I try to understand why you can hear me. But you are unaffected." Daniel rubbed his temple. "Great. So I'm a mystery even to you." Lyrian studied him for a long moment. Finally, she spoke again. "Yes, but for now, you are my responsibility." Daniel arched an eyebrow. "Oh, so I'm officially your problem now." Lyrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned back toward the cave. "For now, you are my home, human." Daniel stood there, stunned. He wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but one thing was clear. Lyrian had made a choice. And somehow, despite everything, he didn't feel so alone anymore. Daniel sat near the cave entrance, staring out into the alien forest. Strange plants glowed softly in the darkness, their colors shifting between blue and green. The air was filled with distant sounds, whispers of unseen creatures moving through the trees. Lyrian sat nearby, her violet eyes watching him. He could feel the weight of her gaze, studying him as if he were some kind of puzzle. "You should rest," she said in his mind. Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Yeah, probably. But it's kinda hard to sleep when you don't know if you'll wake up surrounded by monsters." Lyrian tilted her head slightly. "You are safe here. I will not let anything harm you." Daniel glanced at her. There was no hesitation in her voice. She meant it. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Lyrian hesitated before answering. "Because I must." Daniel frowned. "That's not really an answer." She looked away, staring at the glowing water inside the cave. "I do not understand it myself. But when I found you, something told me I could not leave you there." Daniel studied her carefully. There was something strange about her. She wasn't just some random alien who had decided to help him. There was something deeper, something she wasn't saying. Before he could press her for more answers, she stood up. "Come, I want to show you something." Daniel hesitated. "Now?" "In the middle of the night." Lyrian nodded. "Yes, trust me." Daniel wasn't sure if he did trust her, but at this point, she was the only one keeping him alive. With a sigh, he got up and followed her out of the cave. The night air was cool, filled with the soft hum of alien life. Lyrian moved gracefully, her bare feet making no sound against the moss-covered ground. Daniel, on the other hand, stumbled more than once. Not all of us have super balance, you know, he muttered. Lyrian glanced at him. You are stronger than you think, human. Daniel wasn't sure if that was a compliment or just an observation. After walking for a while, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a large stone structure covered in ancient carvings. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsing with energy. Daniel stared. What is this? Lyrian walked up to the structure, placing her hand on one of the glowing symbols. The stone shuddered, and suddenly, a projection appeared, a map of stars, swirling with light. Daniel's eyes widened. Whoa! This is the knowledge of my ancestors, Lyrian said. Our history, our secrets. Daniel stepped closer, mesmerized by the display. The stars shifted, forming images, tall beings with glowing eyes, spaceships traveling through the galaxy, and finally, war. A terrible war. Daniel watched as the projection showed Lyrian's people being attacked by unknown forces. Cities burned, ships crashed. And then, the survivors hid. They cut themselves off from the universe. Daniel turned to Lyrian. This is why your people don't trust outsiders. She nodded. We have suffered before. We will not suffer again. Daniel looked back at the projection. Then something caught his eye. One of the ancient figures had a symbol on their forehead, the same one that had appeared on the cave walls earlier. And then, another figure appeared. A human. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Wait, is that a human? Lyrian's eyes widened slightly. It cannot be. But there it was, clear as day. A human figure standing among Lyrian's ancestors. They weren't fighting. They weren't enemies. They were allies. Daniel turned to Lyrian. What does this mean? She shook her head, troubled. I do not know. This history, it was hidden from us. Daniel took a deep breath. This changed everything. He wasn't just some lost human on an alien planet. He was part of something much, much bigger. And now, he needed to find out why. Daniel stood frozen, staring at the glowing projection. A human stood among Lyrian's ancestors. It wasn't a mistake. The image was clear. Someone like him had been here before. Lyrian's violet eyes remained locked on the ancient display, troubled. This is not possible. No human has ever set foot on this world. Daniel crossed his arms. Well, clearly, that's not true. Because that, he pointed at the image, is definitely a human. Lyrian didn't argue. She was too deep in thought. Her people had erased most of their history, choosing isolation over knowledge. But now she had seen proof that their past was far more complicated than she had been told. There is only one place where we might find answers, she said at last. Daniel raised an eyebrow. And where's that? Lyrian hesitated. The Hall of Memory. It is forbidden. Daniel exhaled sharply. Of course it is. Lyrian turned to him. It is deep within our city. No outsider has ever entered. Daniel smirked. Then I guess I'll be the first. Lyrian's expression was unreadable. She should have stopped him. She should have refused. But deep inside, she wanted to know the truth as much as he did. She nodded. We leave at first light. The journey to the city. As the sun rose, Daniel and Lyrian set off toward the hidden city of her people. The journey was long, passing through dense forests, across glowing rivers, and over rocky cliffs. Daniel struggled to keep up, his legs aching as they climbed a steep path. You guys ever invent roads? He muttered. Lyrian barely looked back. We do not need them. Daniel rolled his eyes, but kept moving. After hours of travel, they finally reached a massive canyon. At its center, surrounded by mist, lay a breathtaking city. Towers of smooth stone rose into the sky, their surfaces covered in glowing symbols. Bridges of pure energy connected the buildings, and the entire place seemed to hum with ancient power. Daniel let out a low whistle. Okay, that's impressive. Lyrian, however, was tense. If we are caught, my people will not be kind. Daniel nodded. Got it. Stealth mode. They moved carefully through the outer edges of the city, avoiding the watchful eyes of the silent inhabitants. Lyrian led him through hidden pathways, down narrow tunnels, until they reached an enormous building carved into the rock. The Hall of Memory. Lyrian placed her hand against the entrance, and the doors silently slid open. Hurry. They slipped inside. The hall was enormous, filled with floating symbols, glowing scrolls, and ancient records stored in strange crystal-like containers. Lyrian moved quickly, searching through the records. Daniel followed, scanning the glowing texts. The words were unreadable to him, but the images were not. More humans. They appeared again and again, standing alongside Lyrian's people, working together, even fighting side by side in battle. Daniel turned to Lyrian. This wasn't just a meeting. Humans and your people. We were allies. Lyrian's hands trembled as she touched the ancient scrolls. This is not what we were taught. We believed we were alone, abandoned by the stars. But we were not. Daniel looked at the largest image, showing a group of humans and Lyrian's people standing together before a towering machine. Looks like we built something together, he said. What is that? Lyrian stared at it, realization dawning in her eyes. A gateway. Daniel's eyes widened. A gateway, like to another world. Lyrian nodded slowly. If this is true, then humans were not visitors. They were meant to stay. But something happened. Something erased them from our history. A sudden noise made them both freeze. Footsteps. Lyrian's eyes widened. We have been discovered. Daniel clenched his fists. No turning back now. The truth had been buried for centuries. But now, it was coming to light. And Daniel wasn't leaving without answers. Daniel and Lyrian froze as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the Hall of Memory. The air felt heavy with tension. Lyrian's people did not tolerate intruders, especially not humans. Lyrian grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him behind a tall, glowing pillar. She pressed a finger to her lips, though she didn't need to. Daniel knew better than to make a sound. From the entrance, 3 figures stepped into the hall. They wore long, flowing robes embedded with glowing patterns, and their violet eyes shimmered with intensity. Unlike Lyrian, their expressions were cold and unreadable. The sacred records have been disturbed, one of them said telepathically. Someone is here, another added. Daniel held his breath. He could feel Lyrian's fingers tightening around his wrist. She was tense, her mind racing. We should leave, she whispered into his mind. If they see you, they will. Before she could finish, a 4th figure entered. This one was different. He wore a dark, elaborate robe, and his eyes burned with authority. The other 3 immediately stepped back. High Keeper Valen, one of them said with deep respect. Daniel could tell from the way they stood that this man was someone important, someone powerful. Valen walked forward slowly, his gaze scanning the room. Then, without hesitation, he spoke. Come out, Lyrian. Daniel felt Lyrian stiffen. Her breath caught in her throat. Valen's voice was calm, yet firm. I know you are here, child, and I know you are not alone. Lyrian let out a slow exhale. She knew there was no escaping now. Slowly, she stepped out from behind the pillar, and Daniel followed. The 3 robed figures tensed at the sight of him, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. A human did not belong here. Valen, however, did not react with anger. He simply studied Daniel with a look of deep curiosity. Interesting, he murmured. Lyrian lifted her chin. We did not come to harm the records. We only sought the truth. Valen nodded. And did you find it? Daniel stepped forward. Yeah, we did. He pointed at the glowing images of humans and Lyrian's ancestors. You erased this from your history, didn't you? My people were here before. Valen's expression did not change. Yes, they were. Daniel and Lyrian exchanged a look. Lyrian took a step closer. Why was this hidden from us? Valen was silent for a long moment. Then he let out a slow sigh, because it was a tragedy we wished to forget. He gestured to the images, and suddenly the glowing symbols shifted, rearranging into a new vision, one filled with destruction. Daniel and Lyrian watched in horror as the scene unfolded. The gateway, built by both humans and Lyrian's ancestors, stood tall and bright, a shimmering bridge to the stars. But then something went wrong. A terrible explosion erupted, shaking the land. Fire and energy consumed the sky. The humans, they were caught in the destruction. And then, just like that, they were gone. Lyrian's voice was barely a whisper in Daniel's mind. They perished. Valen nodded. We lost our greatest allies that day. And in our grief, we chose silence. We erased them from our history, so we would never feel that pain again. Daniel felt a weight settle in his chest. So that's why you cut yourselves off from the universe. Valen's eyes softened. Yes, we believed it was better to forget than to live with the sorrow. Lyrian shook her head, but the truth should never be forgotten. Valen studied her carefully. You are not like the others, Lyrian. You have always questioned. That is why you found him, is it not? He gestured to Daniel. Daniel clenched his fists. I don't know why I ended up here, but maybe I was meant to find this. Valen nodded. Perhaps, or perhaps the past is not as finished as we thought. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Valen turned to the glowing records. With a single motion, the images shifted again, showing something new. The gateway. It still existed, buried deep beneath the ruins of the past, forgotten by all. Lyrian's breath caught. It was never destroyed. No, Valen admitted. It was sealed away, so no one would ever try to use it again. Daniel's heart pounded. If that thing still works, then maybe the connection between our people isn't lost. Lyrian turned to Valen. We must find it. The High Keeper's expression was unreadable. Then, at last, he spoke. If you wish to uncover the past, then you must be ready for what you will find. Lyrian and Daniel exchanged a look. There was no turning back now. The ancient ruins stretched before them, hidden beneath layers of time and silence. Daniel and Lyrian stood at the entrance, staring at the massive stone doors covered in glowing symbols. The markings were faint, barely alive, but they pulsed like a heartbeat, waiting. High Keeper Valen stood behind them, watching with a mix of caution and curiosity. This place has been sealed for centuries, he said. None of my kind have entered since the day it was buried. Daniel placed a hand on the cold stone. Then it's about time someone did. Lyrian stepped forward, pressing her palm against the central symbol. The glow intensified. The ground rumbled beneath their feet. Slowly, the doors began to slide open. A rush of stale air greeted them as the hidden chamber revealed itself. Inside, massive pillars stretched toward a high ceiling, and at the center stood a towering structure, the gateway. It was broken, covered in cracks, but even in its damaged state, it still hummed with dormant energy. Daniel took a slow step inside, feeling a strange pull deep within his chest. He didn't know why, but something about this place felt familiar. Lyrian ran her fingers over the ancient controls, studying the symbols. The power source is weak, but it is still intact. Daniel turned to Valen. If this thing was meant to connect our worlds, then maybe it still can. Valen's expression darkened. You do not understand the risk. This gateway was closed for a reason. Its failure cost us everything. Lyrian's voice was firm. We have lived in isolation for too long. It is time to face the past. Daniel clenched his fists. And if there are other humans out there, if they're waiting on the other side, don't you think they deserve to know what happened? Valen hesitated. Then, slowly, he gave a nod. If you truly wish to restore the gateway, then you must be prepared for the consequences. Daniel exhaled. Let's do it. The final choice. Activating the gateway wasn't easy. The ancient system resisted, as if afraid to wake up. Lyrian worked quickly, guiding Daniel's hands over the controls. "This should direct power to the core," she said, adjusting a glowing panel. Daniel pressed a switch, and suddenly, the entire room trembled. Sparks flickered across the gateway's surface. The cracks glowed brighter. Then, a surge of energy erupted, filling the air with static. The center of the gateway pulsed, and for the first time in centuries, a swirling portal formed within its frame. Daniel's breath caught. Beyond the glowing vortex, a structure stood in the distance. A station, floating in the void of space. Lyrian's hands trembled. "That is, not of my people." Daniel stepped closer, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. "That's human technology." Valen's eyes widened. Then the connection was never truly lost. Lyrian turned to Daniel. "You have a choice. If you step through, you may find your people, but you may never return here." Daniel looked at the gateway, then back at her. She had saved his life. She had become his friend. And now, they were standing at the edge of something far greater than either of them had imagined. "I don't know what's waiting for me on the other side," Daniel admitted. "But I do know this. Your people and mine were meant to stand together. That's the real truth, isn't it?" Valen nodded solemnly. "Yes, we were never meant to be alone." Lyrian's eyes met Daniel's. "If you go, will you return?" Daniel smiled. "If there's a way back, I promise, I'll find it." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lyrian did something unexpected. She placed a hand over his. "You are my home now, human," she whispered into his mind. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He squeezed her hand gently. Then, with one final breath, he stepped forward, into the unknown.